I appreciate y'all for taking some time out of your schedule. I know most of you are preparing for games this week or some next week, but I want to make sure that we get y'all set up and answer questions and kind of go over some of the new stuff, the new features that have come out since last season, because it's new to all of us. So some new ways that we can monitor our teams and make sure that we're impacting practice and actually getting a full use out of our system. So instead of just it being some flashy stuff that we're using. So I am going to share my screen real quick. All right. And Mark or anybody, can y'all see my screen?
You're good, Dan.
Awesome. So we will go ahead and jump right on into it. Full disclosure, I will send everybody a copy of the slides so that way you have a hard copy of them in front of you to make sure that you guys are all clear and you're good to go, and you have all of this in writing too. My cell phone number, for those, I think everybody that's on so far has it, but it's on here too. My contact information, so feel free to reach out. But really, what I wanted to do tonight is make sure that we went over some of the new updates. So obviously, the Titan monitoring platform, for those of you that were users last football season, the platform itself looks completely different than what it did last season, and for the better. But I know at the same time, for new users, especially those that have never used any kind of GPS monitoring before, the freedom to design and create your own platform on there can be a little overwhelming. So I wanted to make sure that you guys are comfortable, you're familiar with some of these, and you have a place to ask questions to make sure you have everything you need at the same time. And then I want to go over a couple of those metrics, some of the new metrics as well. And then finally, I want to make sure that we establish a contact, because obviously, questions are going to come up over the course of the season, and I want to make sure that you guys have access to those as well, so that way you have somebody to ask questions to, whether it be myself, whether it be Mark, which the vast majority of you guys dealt with in the purchasing process, or one of our new hires that have come on board with us, being Shayna and Gabby. So I will share my screen back up. Sorry, I wanted to make sure we got some folks in here as well. But so that's going to be our purpose for tonight, is just to give you guys that information and establish those contacts, and then we're going to go over those new metrics as well. So again, there are a couple emails for the team, and then my phone number. And again, feel free to reach out with questions as they come up. Also tonight, as we're going through this, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions as they come up. I will ask for questions at the end too, but please don't hold on to those because there's probably questions and stuff that and pieces that I plan on talking about that I'll probably miss, because it's been a crazy day myself too. So, but yeah, so a couple updates that I want to go over, and this isn't an extensive list, but these are a few of the highlights that
Hey Dan.
Yes, sir.
Before you get started, I need help.
Yeah.
New on the Google platform here, not being a Zoom or anything. I cannot see anything. I've got a blank screen and just all the icons. Anybody help me figure out how I can see your shared screen?
One thing you can do is try to log out and come back in. Sometimes I know in Teams when you do that, it can kind of help.
Okay, because I can see everybody who's in the chat, and I saw where a little icon popped up that you were sharing your screen, but then it went away, and I've just got a black screen that says Dan Mullins is presenting.
Awesome. Mark, can you see the PowerPoint or the slides I shared with you?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to pop out and come back in, I can let you back in real quick too.
Okay, I'll do it. You keep talking, I'll figure it out.
You're smarter than me anyway on all this stuff. So
unlikely. All right.
Yeah. So again, this isn't any kind of exhaustive list on any of it, but I just wanted to make sure that we went over some of those highlights. And feel free to jump in and add any questions on any of the stuff as we're going through too. So, all right. Oh, come on now. Did Google really just change everything on me? This is wild. I've got a different presenter view than I've ever had in my life. So All right, let's try this now. All right, there we go. Mark, I'm keep tabbing over to you. Can you see? Did it change slides to the new dashboard slide?
New dashboard. Yep.
Okay, like I said, it had popped me open to a screen that I've never seen before. So obviously, the first thing that most of you are going to notice is the fact that there is a new dashboard. It looks completely different than what we had last season. For those of you that were using with us, and this is a great thing. What this does, it allows you the freedom to set up and manage your dashboard however you want to. It allows you to select the metrics that are important to you and really give you that customizable view of what's right for you and what fits your program or what values you guys hold within your program to be the best for conditioning and performance. Again, it can be like the freedom of it can be a little daunting, but we're going to go over some metrics here at the end that like really the second half and dive into how you set some of these metrics up and what you're looking for in each of those metrics too. Now with it too, I think one of the best features for me is that it's all color coded, right? Like I'm coaching a position too. I'm doing quite a bit of other things on top of just monitoring our data and doing the weight room and all that stuff. So one of the massive features for me is that it's color coded based off certain days. So now I don't have to spend as much time looking at the specific numbers and wondering, all right, what were the ranges? Because last year at this time we had a kickoff for football, and it was, all right, I have this sheet and I'm looking at this sheet and I'm looking for these numbers and all this stuff. And Stefan really called me afterwards and goes, I hate that you're having to do so much stuff on the platform. So I want to change it. And so we did. And this is a fantastic view, and we're going to dive specifically into this. But so the dashboard itself is brand new. I could spend a lot more time here. I'm not going to. But if you need some help setting up your dashboard or how to or any of that stuff, please feel free to shoot me a text and we'll get together one-on-one. So obviously that's the number one. That's the first thing that's brand new as soon as you log in. But there's also another feature that's fantastic. And the reason why I put a lot of stock into this one and the ability of this update is because your wide receivers and DBs, they can run 11 mile per hour, and it's for most of them, and it's going to be pretty easy. Your O-line and D-line, though, 11 mile per hour for a lot of those guys is now pushing 80 and 90%. So a lot of the previous measurements and a lot of the research that's been done out there has been using thresholds like 11, 13 mile an hour. It has been kind of dependent on you as a coach defining what a sprint is for your program. Well, now we can take all of that and we can throw it out the window because we're able to give a personalized percentage, and it's going to make your life a lot easier now because in your manage organization. So here's our tab. We click on organizational admin. We click on manage organization, and we scroll down. And as on the left side, you're going to see personal speed bands. And so with that personal speed bands, you can select whatever percentages you want to put in here. So I chose 70%, 80%, and 90%. We'll talk about why here in just a little bit because there's some things that the ability to add certain features and certain aspects to your dashboard that can go a long way. So we'll dive into the why behind those here in just a little bit too. But so once you add those 70, 80, and 90%, what you can do then is now when you go to your organizational admin and you go to manage roster, every roster, you have the ability to put a kid's speed PR in as like a characteristic of their profile. So what I do, or what I plan to do every Sunday before our coaches meeting, is I'm going to sit down for about 15 minutes and update. All right, who PR'd this week? Come in here to their roster, just input what they got. And now because of that, what we did on this previous page, because we set that 70, 80, and 90% band, by just adding their roster PR here, it's going to automatically calculate all of these. For several users that have jumped on since spring, we were talking about how, I sent you an extra Excel spreadsheet, and you typed in next to their name, you typed their PR, it calculated their 70, 80, and 90. And then you had to go in and you had to input what 14.7, 16.8, and 18.9. Again, Stefan was like, no, that's okay. We're going to make some updates to this and make it a little bit more user-friendly. So now you one time go in there and set 70, 80, 90, and click save. And then each week, just update whoever PR'd, and it's going to automatically calculate those for you. And again, you can jump in at any time and put those in here, and it'll update. So if you only update it every other week or every 3 weeks, all of that's perfectly fine. There's no problem there. All right, so you can do that at any point in time. Okay. Any questions so far before we jump into these next ones? All right. Well, we'll keep rolling then. And like I said, any questions, please feel free to jump on in, and we'll keep rolling. So once you've done that, once you've set your PR, you've set those personal band percentages, it's going to allow you to target some of the actual thresholds that we'll talk about here in just a little bit. So put that once a week, and then you'll be able to monitor and update your team stats for you on some of those metrics. Now, one of the other new features here, and this was as of like a day or two ago, habitually, traditionally when you're looking at the dashboard, or you're looking at the page, it's going to sort everything from highest to lowest on your but I don't know about you guys, but as I've been monitoring, I'm like, all right, I'm looking specifically for this one kid way down here. Where is he? And I'm searching through their name, and I'm trying to find him because I want to hold him accountable. And I'm looking for him, but I can't find him, and it's a lot harder. So I asked Stefan, I said, hey, is there a way that we can do in the settings, if we can do a sort by? And now in the drop-down box, so when you, on all of our graphs or on our player targets and player compare, you click settings, there's this new box that says sort by, and you can either select value or alphabetical. And if you select value, it's going to sort it by whatever the value is you're looking for. It's going to do it highest to lowest, kind of traditionally what you've been seeing. But if you click alphabetically, it's going to put it in descending order. So you're going to see Z first, first name Z, last name A will be at the bottom. And the benefit to that is, for some of these metrics, I want to track player by player. And each week when I look at these, I don't want to necessarily have to look, okay, so Ethan was here last week. Okay, I'm going to toggle to this week's, and Ethan is down here. Well, what did that compare to? And now I'm still making notes on another sheet. Well, if now I can sort it alphabetically, and I can see, all right, well, Ethan is going to be actually right there. Now I toggle it. Oh, he's still right there. Okay, cool. It's going to just makes tracking a little bit easier. So that's just a little feature that you can do that was added this week that I think as the season progresses is going to make our life a little bit easier when it comes to that kind of stuff too. So those are some of the little ones that actually make up a pretty big detail when it comes to actually making our life a little bit easier. But now to kind of one of the big ones here. One more time, I'll pause. Any questions so far? All right. And I keep pausing because it's telling me that somebody's in the waiting room, so I want to jump over and add them too. So, all right. So now for Session Explorer. So obviously Session Explorer changed. We've got this nice, awesome 3D graphic here. And I think that's a fantastic representation. We can manipulate that. It's a great tool for us. But there's some key features in here that are new as well. So for those of you that have talked about tagging and have tagged before, tagging just got a whole heck of a lot easier, because you can type in whatever you want and tag it here by just typing by the drop-down box and then clicking the lock button there. You can do custom tags, session tags. So this is how we go in. And I know for several of you, I've mentioned highlight after a game, I'll highlight the first quarter, tag it, second quarter, tag it, third quarter, tag it, fourth quarter. And then now each session or each portion that you tag, you also have this mini team stats page right here. So if I want to look at, like, for instance, our peak ACell for kids in the first quarter versus the fourth quarter to see how our conditioning demands are, I can do that. But tagging is much easier. And now all of our team stats stuff is right here. So I can flip back and forth between those two. All right. Now with that, again, tagging is a lot easier. But there's also a really cool feature. I don't know about you guys. One of the features that things that I really like to do is I like to be able to hold kids accountable. So when we watch film, or if I know a kid gave up on a play, or if I want to highlight that kid's performance, right? If I want to say good job. There are many times, like, I've seen this and I'm like, all right, I need to open my screen recorder and I need to record it and then download it and save it. Well, one of the awesome features now is that we can just take a I'll come back to field calibration in a second. I'm sorry. We can take essentially like a screen recording of the video of any of our reps that we have just by isolating it in that Session Explorer. So when I go into, and we no longer have to call Mark or Eve for that as well. But when I go into Session Explorer, I can highlight a certain segment. So if this was, for instance, the rep that I want to do or that I want to download, I highlight this rep here. All right, just the exact same as if I was going to tag it. The only thing is it has to be under 1 minute. So for instance, I think this is about a 15, 20-second clip here. Once I highlight this clip, this export animation button starts to illuminate. I click that, and it's going to start recording the screen. So whatever view I have, whether it's this view right here, or if I were to click and drag and rotate the field, it would record that view. But you're going to see it's going to pop up right here on the top left-hand side. It's going to say recording and a percentage, and just let it go. The bigger the file, the longer it takes. But the better your service, your connection, the faster it goes as well. So that will record, and it's going to automatically download, and you can save it to your desktop and export it from there. So now you no longer, if a kid has a fantastic play in practice or gives a great effort running down a tackle from the backside or saving a touchdown or whatever the case may be, and you just want to highlight that, because again, it's going to show you above their head, it's going to show you their mile per hour. So you're going to be able to say, hey, this kid didn't stop or didn't end early. Or for instance, if I wanted to hold Owen Blackwell here accountable and we wanted to pop this up, I would pull this up and show him how his mile per hour, when I said we finished to the goal line, his mile per hour dropped as soon as he crossed the 5. So either way, whether you're holding them accountability or calling somebody out and giving them praise, that's a fantastic way to do it. And now you can just tweet it from there. So, or if you use TikTok or Facebook or some other communication app and you just want to, or text it to your players and their parents, or pop it up the next day in a team meeting, whatever the case may be, it's there for you to use however you want. So that's an awesome way to do it. That's an awesome feature too. The one thing with the new Session Explorer, in order to get this 3D field, you do have to calibrate the field. The good news is once you calibrate it one time, it's done. So obviously with a bunch of Titan users out there now calibrating fields, even when you go play away, the goal is to have such a database of calibrated high school fields that many of the games that you play, you'll never have to calibrate again. But again, this is a very simple process. In Google, the easiest way I found to do it is in Google Maps. You go to the stadium of whatever you're playing for. So if you're playing an away game for us, like let's say we're going up to Cartersville and play, I can go to Google Maps and get the longitude and latitude and just copy it and then paste it here. So in Session Explorer, I'll go add chart, calibrate field, and then under the settings button, I can enter the longitude and latitude that I copy pasted from Google Maps. So there's also this calibrate help or calibration help button here that can walk you through this if you forget it. But once you pull that up, I can go here, click settings. I can paste the latitude, longitude, and click go from Google Maps, and it will take me directly to where I was. Now I click on that field and you're going to see like this segment pop up that looks just like the field. You're going to use your arrow keys to tap it into place to wherever you go. This bottom right here, this can, if you click and hold it, you can rotate the field to make it like fit as close as possible. And then you click the green check mark. When you're done, it's going to look just like this. So I know it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. So that's about as close as I could get it to our field. So, and then you're done. You never have to do it again. So now every time that you use that field, it's going to pop up with your logo, and it's going to look just like this for you, whether you're playing at home, whether you're, if you're Dan Wedding and you're playing at Savannah, not Prep, but Calvary. If you go over to Calvary, it's going to show, and you guys play there on a Friday night, it's going to show your field here and your logo and stuff like that for you too, every time you ever go over there. So, and again, that's one time and it's done, and that field's calibrated. So that's the video export. That's how you calibrate the field. Again, this is a huge tool for us. We watch this next to film all the time, so that way we can hold kids accountable, the kids that we have with vests, and we can call them out for giving great effort all the time. Because I know a lot of us are looking for ways to make our practices a little bit more competitive and things like that. So that's the new Session Explorer. And those are the new pieces that I wanted to highlight for you guys before we jump into the kind of the meat and potatoes real quick, and settle in for the next like 20 minutes or so, and highlight some of these. But before we do, one more time, definitely want to open it up for questions and see if anybody has any questions on the updates on how to add anything or how to do anything so far.
Yeah, I had a question on so let's say like it's away games, you've got your field calibrated. Do you have a timestamp? Like, are you having somebody write down in the second quarter at whatever time it was, this rep happened, or are you just watching film and seeing what it looks like? Like, if, I got a linebacker, pursuing into the flat and he doesn't take a good angle and he's kind of just half-assing out there. Are you saying, hey, that looks like my play on film, or is there like a timestamp going along with it?
So the easiest way that I've seen to do this, and I'll share my screen again with you, but show you kind of my session explorer as well. Do you see the little peaks and valleys here?
Yes.
On the blue lines down here. This isn't a great example because it's not an actual game, but when you get into a game and you guys hit a quarter, you're gonna have like this extended period of drop off. So it'll look something like that right there, but it'll be for like a 3-minute period. So when you zoom in, those get more exaggerated. So I've had in the past, like pregame, I'll open up a note in my phone and I'll just like record the time that the quarter changes. I've also had a manager in the past who could write that down, and remembered. So when I had him, he was able to write down each possession. So like offense, first possession, 7:32 to 7:39, and we would get really detailed with that. But he graduated and I don't have him anymore. So I keep a rough time in my notes, but at the end of the day, if I forget to do it, it's not a big deal because I'm going to see these peaks and valleys here. And I'm going to know, all right, cool. Well, there's a 3-minute segment here of this entire time where everybody is huddled over here on the sideline, right? That's my end of my first quarter. So I'll highlight everything before it, tag it first quarter, and then after it for second quarter when we go into halftime. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes a ton of sense.
So that's the easiest way I found to kind of do that without having to take and delegate 15 different jobs on the weekends or on Friday night. I mean, cool. So we'll jump right on in then to our talking. I just want to highlight 5 specific metrics for you guys that I found to be very helpful as I've been preparing teams, and that's just made my life a little bit easier. Again, with the new team stats page, it's going to be even easier now because I can just look for colors, and based off whichever metric we're talking about, the color you are based off the number of the day of the week it is kind of helps determine what direction we need to go and how we need to make some changes to the practice plan or whatnot. So the first one that I look at is sprint count over 90%. All right. Again, we set those thresholds earlier. We had the 70, 80, 90% in the organizational admin, and then each kid's PR, we set that. So now that's what this is working off of. So now we can be very specific here. So, and shout out Joe Stikowski, who's on as well tonight, but his tweet from the other day talking about how his team has kind of been slow in the morning, and then all of a sudden they show up and on an afternoon practice have a ton of PRs, right? The stimulus is really what matters. I think is what a lot of the people that are really, really smart that commented on there. The stimulus is what matters. So whether or not you're getting that output from them, their ability to be exposed to a high stimulus and give great effort at their relative PR of what their morning practice was is what's been allowing them to be able to get faster, even though their output, right, their mile per hour output isn't as high as what it was before they went to break or before they went on break. So their ability to be giving good effort all summer long, and then they flop over to the afternoon and now their output's crazy, right? That's only because of the stimulus that they've gotten. So that highlights for the importance of getting that stimulus in. Well, one of the ways we track stimulus is the output. So the more times that a kid is touching 90% of their max velocity, the more frequently or the more opportunities they're going to have to continue to get faster, right? And this is just one of the ways to track it. But it's one of the best ways as well, because if you're habitually 2 times a week, 3 times a week, hitting 90% of your PR is going to go up. And that's just, I mean, Les Spellman talks about it. Tony Holler talks about it. Like, there's a lot of people that talk about sprinting at max capacity frequently is what's going to make you faster. So if we can hit that 90% habitually, there's a reason why really, really smart people have to work, right? So how we do it in Titan, how we track it in our dashboard, right? So team stats, this one here is a player target chart. So again, it allows us to set kind of a min and a maximum threshold to start turning colors at different points. But we add that player targets chart, and then we're going to go session, second drop down GPS, third drop down, we're going to hit personal bands. And once you do that, it opens up a fourth drop down box that looks just like this. From there, you can select band 1, band 2, and band 3. So band 1 is that 70% threshold. Band 2 is 80% threshold. Band 3 is 90% threshold. Now with it, you have an additional decision. You can click on distance, which would give you your yardage over each one of those thresholds. You can click count, and it would give you an effort count of each one of those thresholds, or you can do duration, which would be the seconds, or I guess minutes as well, depending on the threshold, the duration above that threshold. So for sprint count, we want band 3 over 90%. We want band 3 because that's 90%, and we want count. And then now that's going to update the chart itself. In the settings box, I named this one the chart title sprint count over 90%. That makes sense. Sort by, again, name, value, whichever you want. I do name. I'm going to be doing name this year because that way each person's name's in the same slot. And then I'm going to under date range, you want week to day. So you can do day, but when you click week, the daily view, but when you click week to day, it's going to start highlighting these in different colors. It's going to track it throughout the course of the week, and it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. So for the minimum, right? For the minimum, I want 2 per week. Okay. We've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of preparation. I want to see our kids hit 90%. I want a minimum of 2 efforts, and I would like to see that on 2 different days. So the most recent reasoning behind that is that speed is one of those qualities, and this is a Les Spellman thing for any of you guys that follow him. Speed is one of those, the ability to sprint at max velocity is one of those thresholds that starts to diminish after anywhere between 48 and 72 hours. So strength, we typically can hold on to, depending on what we're talking about, we can typically hold on to anywhere from 2 weeks, 30 days, depending on who it is, how trained you are, and things like that. But they're finding that speed, if you're not sprinting at maximum intent, that the ability to sprint fast is going to start to diminish between 48 and 72 hours out. Well, if we're hitting 2 threshold or 2 sprints over 90%, one on 2 different days, all right, let's say we hit it on Monday, and then say we hit it again on Wednesday. Well, 48 hours later, even if you're on the short side of that window, you're still going to be prepared to be able to go out Friday night and do it. So I want to see our kids to hit 2 efforts total at minimum. And then I set the max at 5 because that's really where I want to start pulling back on kids. All right. Once they get to 9, I really don't want them going over 9. I'm going to be able to track this and some of the other metrics we're going to talk about. I'm going to track it more this year and be able to give you guys a little bit more this time next year, a little bit more in depth of a look on this. But 9 is kind of where, like, if we're truly for our skill kids now, if we're talking like an O-line or D-line, that might be a little bit different gray area if their PR isn't very high. But if we're a skill kid and you're sprinting 21 mile an hour and you're getting 9, 10 efforts over, that'd be 18.5 mile an hour. We might need to take a look at what you're doing. Now, some kids can handle that really well, but some kids, if that's a spike and like they're usually hitting 2, 3, 4, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere they hit 11, Friday they might be a little tired, right? They might be a little gassed. So that's where kind of the art of some of this interpretation comes into play. Now, I'm going to click this slide to the next one, and it's going to show you my a screenshot that I took from the same session. Don't pay any attention to the numbers because some of the thresholds weren't set right. So when I say I pull back after 9 and then I flip the page to Owen Blackwell and he's at 32, he's not actually at 32. It's just that I had his threshold jacked up on the first day. So don't pay any attention to some of these. That's just simply because of those weren't set right at the time. So that sprint count over 90, this is what that chart's going to start looking like. again, when you set that floor at 2 or that min at 2 and that max at 5, you're going to see everybody in blue or people that weren't haven't been colored in. Either they haven't hit any or they hit 1. Once you cross over and you hit 2 and you cross over that max, and this goes for any of the player targets charts, it's going to turn green. So as soon as they cross that min, it's going to turn green. As they approach the max, it's going to turn yellow. Once it crosses the max, it's going to turn orange. And then the further past that max threshold it gets, it's going to turn red. So it's going to give you a heat map of where they are based off whatever settings you have. So where they are on their sprint count for the week. So if it's Tuesday for our program, if we finish Tuesday's practice, I sync our pods and I look and you're still blue. On Wednesday, we get to go outside and you get to sprint during class because I need to get you some exposures. Vice versa, if it's Tuesday and you're already green or you're approaching or you're yellow, we might need to pull back on you. You may start to get limited to your downfield routes, or if you're on kickoff, you might not be going in. You might just have to, your backup might be getting a rep and you get mental reps on what your lanes are, things like that. But while we track sprint count, we have to have our kids have to be exposed to that stimulus over 85%. If the last time our kid has touched 85 and 90% was last Friday, then either you were dealing with an injury or something. You weren't giving great effort. Your recovery was poor. I wasn't doing my job and giving you opportunities to expose yourself to those stimuluses or that stimuli. But either way, you're not going to be prepared for this Friday's game. So I need to make sure that we're hitting that. So that's the why behind we want to hit those. And again, we track the output. So there's a lot of different ways to do this, but the most efficient way for us would be the sprint count over 90%. So again, some of those thresholds, I'm looking for at least one effort on 2 different days per week between Monday through Thursday. Again, I don't 100% know if there's going to be a cap to this. I'm thinking around 9. My goal is to kind of target and see, all right, well, this week of practice, this kid had 11. His PR, he had the opportunity to where he hit the open field, but he didn't PR. He was actually a mile and a half. Well, he was overcooked. So I'm going to try to find some caps for this for next year. We didn't have the technology for me to be able to do this last year. So kind of in a little bit uncharted territory here. So that's sprint count over 90. That's the first one. That's a really good one to see if our kids are going to be prepared for Friday or when that time comes, if they're going to be able to sprint because of the amount of exposure that they've had. Next one is how much volume. So we just talked about the frequency that they're hitting that intensity. Well, now how much volume have they had over those thresholds? So kind of the same thing. We're looking at a player target chart. We're going to go personal bands, but this time instead of going band 3 count, we're going to click on band 1 and we're going to click distance. And now this chart is going to tell me how many yards has each athlete sprinted or traveled over 70% of their PR. Again, for some of your O-linemen, this might be 8 or 9 mile an hour, but those still count. For some of your DBs, this might be 14 mile an hour. It might be 10. It just depends on what that PR is that you've inputted. All right. But I need to know the yards over 70% that each one of our athletes has done. And again, this is Monday through Thursday. And we're going to talk about the thresholds of how to set these thresholds here in a minute. Again, name to the chart title, sprint yards over 70. Again, I want to track it by name. I also want this to be week to day because I need to track Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday all aggregated on the same graph. And then I can set my personalized thresholds. Right now, these are just based off percentage about the position group, right? These numbers will get individualized once we have some data from this first season or their first game this season. I'm sorry. So as far as what I'm looking at in this graph, why we want to do this is we want to ensure that each athlete has had enough volume and is prepared enough to go play. So I want to make sure that you've had enough of that stimulus when it comes to the yardage. This is one of those conditioning things. We want to make sure that you've been exposed to enough yardage over 70% so that way you're not going to be burnt out when it comes to the fourth quarter. So again, our goal or my definition of conditioning is what are our outputs in the first quarter? Well, how do the outputs of our fourth quarter performance based off gameplay, again, going into it, but how is our ability to play the game in the fourth quarter compared to the first quarter? And that's conditioning. We want to be able to play in the fourth quarter as close to as how we were able to play in the first. So this is one of those metrics Monday through Thursday that allows us to do that. So as far as what we're looking for, we want 1.6 to 1.8 times their game PR. So again, every Sunday I come in and I look, all right, on Friday night, how many yards over 70% did each one of these guys hit? And I'm going to adjust that min and max to match that 1.6 to 1.8. So for instance, let's say Miles Davis, and I'm going to make up some fictitious numbers here to make the math a little bit easier on me. Let's say, to make it really easy, wild number here, Miles Davis had 1,000 yards on Friday night, over 70%. Well, that next week, he needs to hit 1.6 to 1.8 times that for Monday through Thursday. So his floor is going to be 1,600 yards, or that min is going to be 1,600 yards in settings. His max is going to be 1,800. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to type those in and I'm going to go down. I'm going to take however many yards they had Friday night and I'm going to multiply by 1.6, multiply by 1.8. There's my range from my min and my max. Now, next Sunday, so week 2, we finish week 2's game. We're coming in for our meeting for week 3. All I need to do is look and see, all right, who PR'd? And only ones I got to update are the people that PR'd. If they didn't PR, don't change it. I still got a minute. Again, after blue on Tuesday, if you're blue, cool. We got some sprint. We got some work to do. Let's get you up. I'm sorry. After Wednesday, if you're still blue, we got to get you some up a little bit more. Vice versa. If you're green and it's Tuesday, start pulling back or start because you still have 2 more days of practice to go. So our goal is to keep you under, but we understand that there's going to be times where that's not possible. We just want to limit how much over you're really going. And again, some kids handle volume better than others. That's why there's some great ways. There's some great research coming out right now about ways to kind of fact check this. So like using things like a rolling average of their vertical jump, using things like if you have EBT, a peak power test. There's a lot of different ways to try to identify or use GPS as the identifier of who could be fatigued, and then using one of those other technologies or using a different method to see who is actually impacted or who is actually affected by the volume that they're experiencing at practice. So again, I'm coming in after practice. I'm looking for colors. I asked myself on Tuesday, is anyone green after Tuesday's practice? Then make my prescription change. Wednesday, is there anybody blue? Okay, cool. These guys are blue. We need to go sprint. And that's it. All right. You don't have to dive into the numbers specifically. Again, these updates have made it so easy for us to get the most out of these kids and make sure that they're actually prepared without adding more onto our plates because we've got enough going on. So again, we want to make sure those kids have had enough volume. They've had those intensities, the exposures to 90%. Any questions on those first 2 metrics before we hit these last 3? Okay. Player load, very similar to the previous one. Only difference is that it's going to take into account all of the work that your athletes have done over multiple intensities, right? So let's take a safety, for instance, okay? Throughout the course of a game, let's say our safety is reading his keys very well in the first half. They're running the ball. They're trying to run the ball a lot more. We keep stuffing it. He's running the J. He's making some tackles, but there's not a ton of exposure. We're playing our job really, really well, right? There's not a ton of exposure. So his PR in the first half, his top speed PR might have only been like 14 mile an hour. And that's specifically because of the gameplay and the style of play. He's got a lot of yards under that 14 mile an hour area. Well, in the second half, they start opening it up a little bit. He has to cover some downfield routes. They break one, and he's got to run it down. He reaches up to 20 mile an hour. Well, he's now got some yardage over all sorts of different ranges of their of intensities. Player load takes all of that into account, the total yardage that they've had throughout the intensities. So, for instance, if he's let's say our player that we're talking about, his top speed ever was 20 mile an hour on the dot. Running or sprinting and playing anywhere from 10 to 14 mile per hour has a certain toll on that player's body. Playing ball between 14 and 17 mile an hour has a different toll on the body and the nervous system. And playing 17 to 20 mile an hour has the most taxing for that kid. Well, the amount of time, the yardage that they spend in each of those ranges is what kind of goes into player load. So there's this exponential weighted scale toward the higher velocities, but player load gives us a great way of taking a look at what some of those volumes and intensity metrics combined plugs it into an algorithm, and it's going to populate a score based off their volume and at certain intensities across that spectrum. If you want more information on that, we can talk a little bit more in depth on a call just us, but we're going to leave it at that for now. So with this, again, another player target chart, but this time instead of a fourth box, you can just select player load. And then in the settings, again, weekly player load, I sorted it by name. I want to make sure we're looking at week to day because I want to track Monday through Thursday. And then I can set those thresholds. Very similar to what we talked about with our sprint yardage. We want to track 1.6 to 1.8 times that game PR. So again, I just look at, all right, on Friday night, who PR'd? Who set a new PR for their player load? All right, and those are the only ones I got to change. And that's it. So I use that same exact metric, 1.6 to 1.8 times. And that's, again, another metric that came out of, by the way, when I reference research with a lot of the GPS stuff, it's coming off of college football because there's not a ton out there from high school football. My goal is to change that, but we're not there right now. So that 1.6 to 1.8 is, again, is a research value based off some studies that were done on college football and some of the GPS norms that they were finding there. But again, it's taking out the volume and the intensities to make sure that our players are game ready and help with player injury prevention. So we need 1.6 to 1.8 times that game PR. So there's your min, there's your max, and kind of the same thing. I'm looking for colors. So Tuesday, same thing. Anybody green? All right, those are identify the kids that I might need to pull back on. Wednesday, anyone blue? All right, we got to go get some sprints in. Now this sprint, this session may be a little bit more change of direction focus. So I'm trying to bucket, and I know I say, all right, Wednesday we're going to go, or Thursday we're going to go sprint based off these people that were blue. I kind of label them. So if you need top speed, or if you need yardage, or if you need player load, I've got 3 specific exercises. Well, maybe if you need 2 of them, maybe you've only had 1 exposure to top speed and you need 150 yards. All right, cool. We're going to get a good warm up in, and we're going side to side on the field, a quarter gasser. So just over. All right, you're going to get on the line. You're going to sprint across the field. And I tell our guys, pull off at the numbers. All right, so you're going to sprint to the numbers. You're going to start pulling off, and I don't want you to touch the track. So that way you come to a slower stop. There's 1,000 different ways to do this. But I've noticed that can give us the opportunity about 35 to 40 yards of high-speed yardage, depending on the kid's PR. So that's a pretty good number, a pretty good exercise for us because I know what I need. Vice versa, if you need player load, we're going to get some change of direction in Kyle Keese's grid. If you're not familiar with that, let me know. I can send you the presentations that he sent me. It's a grid method that allows them to get a lot of change of directions really quickly. And I've noticed that it's been a great way for us to artificially increase the intensity on some of our player load because we can get across it. Yeah, so that's player load. Again, a lot of the same standards that we were talking about earlier. Acute chronic workload. So without getting too into the weeds on acute load, all right, so what this is a ratio score. So it's taking your load over the course of the last 7 days, and it's going to divide it by the load over your last 28 days. What this does is essentially tells you how hard has this kid worked in the last 7 days compared to the last 28 days. For football coaches, let's make this a little bit easier. So think of your number 2 wide receiver right now. Okay, he's only getting a certain number of reps. Maybe not. Let's say it's week 5. Your number 2 wide receiver. He's not playing both ways. He's a backup on defense. He's a backup on offense. He's not getting a ton of reps in practice. So his current load over the course of the last 28 days is pretty low. Well, all of a sudden, the number 1 gets hurt. He's got to step in. So now mid-game, he steps in mid-game on a Friday night, plays Friday. Well, now that next week, he's the guy. Your starter rolled his ankle, whatever the case may be. He's definitely going to be out this next week. So this guy's getting all the reps. He's getting all the number 1 reps. He's getting downfield routes. He's getting a lot more load than what he was before. His acute load, his last 7 days, is going to be really, really high. His chronic load, because there was a guy starting over top of him getting all the 1 reps, his chronic load is going to be really low. So that ratio is going to be out of balance. It's going to be heavily trended toward the acute. So he's going to be really, really high on his acute ratio, right? So he's going to be somewhere over here in the red. Vice versa, a case in point for us, we had a starting receiver playing through the first 8 weeks of the season last year. And he was a receiver for us, but he was our backup quarterback. Well, by week 7 or 8, our starter, it was obvious he had kind of like checked out a little bit. He wasn't playing to the level we wanted to, so we wanted to increase the competition with him. So we moved the backup to primarily a quarterback fighting for the starting job. So that took a lot of the load off of him because he had built up this chronic load over the course of the last 4 weeks playing receiver, or last 21 days, however you want to calculate it, playing receiver. And then now all of a sudden he switched to quarterback, and he's not accumulating that load because he's not running nearly as much playing quarterback as he was receiver. So his acute load was going to be really, really low. All right. Now, it's not a bad thing. Whether it's too high, too low, as long as there's a reason, as long as you understand, all right, why are these kids really, really low? Why are these kids really, really high? Well, I can tell you right now, the vast majority of these kids are really high because we just came back and we went from a 3-day week to a 4-day week. So naturally their acute load is going to go up. I can tell you these kids are really, really low because I just implemented a Titan contract that they have to get signed before I give them back their Titan, saying that if they lose their vest, they're paying for it because I'm tired of that. So they haven't gotten their contract back to me. So they're not wearing their unit. So that's why their acute load is really, really low. Right. So, and there's everywhere in between. So as we build up into the season, these numbers start to get a little bit more regulated. They kind of get, once we get a lot more consistency with Monday through Thursday practice, Friday game, these numbers start to work themselves out a little bit. But our goal, we want to be between 0.8 and 1.5. If you look at this graph here, so this is one that's automatically loaded in. This is the player ACWL. If you click on that, add that to your dashboard, there's a green line at 0.8. That's because we want to keep them over 0.8. And there's a red line at 1.5 because we want to keep them under 1.5. And those are automatically preset in there based off, again, some research-backed numbers that help us to keep kids healthy. And that's specifically what this is. We want to make sure kids have had enough volume so that their chronic experience, their chronic ability has been built up, but their acute day isn't out of whack. Also, acute chronic timeline, so the ACWL timeline. This is a great one for head coaches and coordinators as they're preparing practice. We implemented kind of like Charlie Francis's high-low model. Kirby Smart a couple years back implemented like no sweat Thursday because they play on Saturday. The Friday game version would be a no sweat Wednesday. We implemented that a couple years back when we were our staff was at Loganville. We saw some great returns from it. So essentially, Monday's a really heavy teaching day, but we want to work some stuff out. So we want to kind of have that one of those middays. Tuesday, our high day, we want to get after it, right? We do a lot of our downfield passing routes. We do a shot plays. We're obviously defending those shot plays. So our DBs are getting a lot more competitive routes in there. We do a heavy period of routes on air. So that way, like we're artificially inflating, we're taking that nervous system way up. And then Wednesday, we do no sweat Wednesday. So it's just a helmet practice. It's essentially at like a jog pace. We jog our routes for our kickoff because it's our second day of doing kickoff. We do a lot of walk and talk. We do a little bit of inside run, but everything is a quick whistle on there. And everything's obviously tap off because we're pads. So we bring that nervous system down. We shoot it back up Thursday. And then Friday, we go play ball because we've just primed everything. So, this graph here, the acute chronic timeline or the ACWL trend, is a team aspect or a team view of where we're at each day. Again, this was a sample of last year's season. So this week, teaching day, pretty low. All right, Tuesday was supposed to be a get after it day, but we were expecting thunderstorms on Thursday, so we weren't going to be able to get our midday in. So we pushed our midday to Wednesday. Obviously, we didn't practice on Thursday because of the thunderstorms because we don't have an indoor stadium or an indoor practice field. So we pushed our midday here. We went to the gym. We had walkthrough on Thursday, and then we went and played. And then kind of some very similar lines. You can kind of see the beginning of the trend here. This was our no sweat Wednesday practice, pretty dang low, midday, and what we would call our high day. This was a win. This was a win. So when we get this model, when it actually like comes to play and the teams are evenly matched, we're pretty spot on kind of those outputs of what we're getting. So this is a great way for coaches to impact practice. Hey, yesterday was supposed to be a low or a high day, but we only got a midday. We haven't had any high day. We got to be able to make that up. So we can't have no sweat Wednesday. We'll push it to no sweat Thursday, and we got to get after it today. So this is a way to ensure that the head coach's vision for practice, whatever that looks like in your world, we want to make sure we're delivering that. So that's how we do that there. And then finally, so why we wanted that again, injury prevention. Has the athlete's exposure to volume changed? So is there a reason? Is it an injury? Like, are they dealing with some kind of a chronic injury that's not allowing them to get the load and the volume that they were getting previously? That might be a reason why they're dipping under that 0.8. So it allows me to identify who I need to have those questions for. And is there a reason? Is there a reason why? So we want them to be a 1.2 to 1.4 early in the season. We want to push toward that red line early in the season. And then late in the season, we want to dial it back and get as close to 1 as possible if there's not one of those reasons that we can, like a positional change or depth chart status change, things like that. And then finally, this is a really, really good one that I found for player accountability. And it's the last one. It's pretty quickly. So that third drop down, we're going to click ACell zones, and we're going to click it's going to give you a count, and we're going to click the threshold of 3, because I found that our kids, the kids at least that we have at Allatoona, if I'm asking them to go and they give good effort and they have 3 to 5 yards of space before they have contact, we're going to get 3 meters per second squared or above in their acceleration. They can give that pretty easily. Our warm up has the opportunity to get, I think I counted it to be 7 efforts. So this is one way for me. Again, I'll filter this on our Session Explorer and just look and see. All right, well, each kid had 7 efforts. Who had 5 or more? All right, those guys have probably had a good practice today. Oh, who had 2? Okay, well, they either are hurt, they were late to practice, they didn't put their pod in, or they were just given half butt effort, for lack of a better term. So allows me to keep them a little bit more accountable. And I call this just simply the effort count. Our kids have started understanding it as effort count. And each day I'll make a leaderboard of this, and I'll send it in our group chat with our coaches, so our coaches know which kids our top 5 effort count for the day was. So it's effort count, sort by name. This one I like to do selected date, because it gives me a picture of that specific practice of the day that I'm looking at. And then I want to see them between 60 and 100 each day. All right. I know some people, like there are some schools that are in this state that I've talked to that can get this number, and they're sitting around 115, 120. And that's all based off how they practice, how long they practice, and the kind of effort they're getting out of kids. Right. So, but for us, the sweet spot is really between 60 and 100 per day. We're having ourselves a good day. So why? Again, player accountability. It helps us identify the need for conversations. So, hey, man, Noah, why were you only at 27 efforts today? All right, well, is it something going on like with your health? Did you not rest? Did you do your end of the bargain? Maybe you just didn't get enough, as many reps as you normally do. Like, what's the case? Why were you only 27? And vice versa, I can highlight, hey, Kaiser, you had 96 efforts today. That's fantastic. Great job. Keep it up. But it's also a excellent conditioning metric for your O-line and D-line. If we're getting this number up for our O-line and D-line, they're going to be ready for Friday night. This is how they're going to be able to give great effort over and pound the rock over and over and over again from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. Is if we're habitually building up an effort count, an acceleration count over 3, that is conditioning in the trenches. Like that's case in point. That's how the game of football is played. So hopefully this year, again, I didn't have the ability to really track this last year efficiently with the new dashboard. I can. So hopefully this time next year, I'll be able to give you some standards, especially position wise, to give you some of this. And I'm looking at some pretty cool metrics too. But I'm not really ready to share those yet, because I want to make sure that what I'm giving you is sound, and it's not just like, hey, I think this might work. So I'll give you, hopefully next year, I'll be able to give you some feedback on those. But that's an effort count. Again, very easy for kids to understand, very easy for coaches to understand. And it has a good impact on raising the competitiveness of practice each day as well. So again, don't worry about taking a QR of this or a picture of that QR code if you're listening live. I'm going to send you a copy of the slides, but that's just for anybody that's watching later. that couldn't make it. If you want a copy of it, you can scan that, fill that out, and it'll send you a copy of the slides so that you have a copy of all of those with some of those standards. And then there's, again, my contact information and the emails for our team. That way, if you have questions as they come up over the course of the season, please feel free to reach out and ask. That's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for. If you're saying, hey, I've been having habitually this output or this phenomenon is happening in my data, how do I impact practice with it? Give me a call, shoot me a text, give me a call. We can set up a time to meet, and we can go over some strategies to help fix the problem, or maybe it's a good thing and we can help pull others up to it as well. So if you're seeing stuff like that, please let me know. If you need help, I'm a resource for you to help you get the most out of the product, because the last thing I want you to do is feel like, hey, we got this product, we got this GPS sensors, but like we're not really getting much out of it. Other than like, hey, there's a flashy leaderboard for top speed, or hey, we were on the state leaderboard this year, or this week, or the national leaderboard, whatever the case may be. I want to make sure that you're actually being able to impact practice and that we can support you in any way, understanding the data or implementing the data of what you're seeing. So I wanted to get that out of the way, but definitely want to open up to you guys to see if there's any questions that you have. I know I just threw a lot of information at you in the last 20 minutes, especially, but want to open it up to you guys for questions on anything. All right, guys. Well, I'll stay on a few more minutes if you just don't want to ask in front of everybody. But feel free to reach out to me if you guys need anything as the season goes. But yeah, I appreciate y'all coming on, and I'll also email you guys the link out too once I get it uploaded and all that stuff too. So appreciate you guys, and hope y'all have a good night.